Hello. So, I think the last time I chatted with you guys, we were in the middle of rebuilding the rear triangle and correcting all of that. So, let's just pretend, not have to pretend, that's where we are now, right? So, we have the front triangle behind me in the bike jig. You're just going to have to take my word for it. But it's back there with all of its parts torn off of it, just as naked as the day it was born. And I got to tell you, this should come as no surprise. Since I already spent a bunch of time and energy and money painting the stupid thing, it should come as no surprise that I'm considering repainting it. Cool. Pause for surprise noises. Anyway, let me explain why. So, yes, I know we already painted it, but we kind of did it sort of quick and dirty because I wanted to get it out and just try it. I knew we were going to have to rebuild the rear end. I assumed that blue was going to get us through the summer, but honestly, it just ended up being super soft and it didn't work out the way I wanted. And anyway, you know what we say around here, not done right until it's done twice. So, we're thinking about, because we're also very stupid, we are thinking about, since everything's already torn off the frame, listen, let me explain. Since everything's already torn off the frame, the idea of building, once I get the rear triangle redone, of building the whole thing back up again, to ride it for a couple of months, to only just tear it all down again, to paint it when it's warm, oh my god, it's driving me crazy just thinking about it. It's making me so angry. So, I'm thinking, no time like the present, let's go ahead and paint the stupid bike. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out, hypothetically, if we were going to paint this indoors somewhere, how would we do that? Because I'm not sure if you've noticed, looking around here, I'm not exactly flush with resources, so I don't have a shop, a paint booth, any of those things, right? So we're just trying to like quick and dirty guerrilla style painting here, guys. So I'm not sure. I'm just kind of flapping ideas around. Speaking of flapping ideas around, wouldn't it be fun, is rather than just sitting here at the bench, wouldn't it be fun if we did like that thing where I'm talking, I'm theorizing, I'm visualizing. There's the one, visualization. I'm visualizing what I'm thinking, right? So you guys are actually kind of having a peek inside my imagination. So to make that maybe a little easier to follow along with all of this visualization and imagination that we've got going on, maybe we ought to make the parts where it's you and I sitting here a color, and then the parts where we're just talking about hypothetically what might happen could be a different color. Wouldn't that be cool? That way it's easier to keep it track of what's real and what's just sort of hypothetically might happen as we go through with this thought experiment. Let's try that. Let's make that shit happen. Okay, so we'll have this be this color. Cool. And then as we go through, our imagination will be this color here. Awesome. That'll be great. Let's do that. Okay then, so hypothetically, if we were going to try to do this, we're going to have to find a place inside to do all of our prepping and all of our painting, because the weather as of late has been, well, crap. So, in an ideal world, we'd find a place to set this up and start sanding it where we could, be working. Just a second. Barring that wonderful opportunity, what we're going to have to do is just find a place to set it up and start sanding. Everyone's favorite, more sanding. Then we'll sand, and we'll sand, and we'll sand, and we'll sand, and we'll sand, until we have all of that blue off that frame and it's nice and clean and in bare metal again. So that's what we'd have to do. Well, all that time and all that energy that we spent doing that blue, we would have to take all of that shit off. Then, hypothetically, once we'd sanded all the blue off, we'd be in bare metal. We're going to have to wax and grease remover the whole thing all over again. So we'd have to then, because we've been handling it and touching it and we'd been sanding it, we would have to wax and grease remover the whole thing, or surface prep it as it's called. What this does is this pulls all the, can you guess, the wax and the grease and the junk and the shit off on the tubing. It kind of picks it up and holds it in solution, right? So you wipe it down real wet, and then you wipe it off dry. That's important. You need to wet it and then dry it. Otherwise, it'd be like washing your hands and not rinsing them. The rinsing is where the magic is. So do that. We're gonna have to wax and grease it, and don't just do it once. If you're doing this to your own shit, don't just wipe it down once and think, haha, there, I'm done. You gotta do it more times. I usually, since time is cheap, right? I usually will wax and grease remover at least twice, preferably 3 times, and I'll show you why. Fucking 3 times and we're still wiping shit off of that. See? So do it a bunch of times. You gotta be really thorough with this. I cannot stress how important this is to get all the shit off. Because imagine you now, hypothetically, we're gonna prime this, we're gonna put a base coat on it, we're gonna do all of these things. If there's like fingerprints or dirt or dust underneath your primer layer, it doesn't want to adhere, and it's going to want to bubble and pop and come off right there, and that is a pain in the ass when that happens, and it sucks. So do not cheap out on the wax and grease. Do it a bunch of times. Do it until you're satisfied, hypothetically. So then, after we'd wax and grease removered the whole thing multiple times, then we'd have to prime the whole thing all over again, because I'm not doing a transparent coat. I would want to hypothetically do a solid coat on it. So now we got to prime that metal. So, not just any primer, now we have to etch prime that, and I'll show you why. Hang on, let me get an example. So, etch primer. Etch primer. It's not cheap, but go do yourself a favor, go to the paint store or buy it online, something, get the real deal. Let me show you why. See that? See that right there? What that is, you're looking at a little bit of gray etch primer. This was a rock strike that was hard enough, I almost fell off the bike, that was so hard. And you'll notice we're missing the clear, we're missing all of our metal flake, we're missing our base coat. That thing is chipped all the way down as far as it could go, but guess what's still there? Etch primer. Etch primer. Because what it actually does is there's an acid in it, and it actually etches itself and binds to the metal. So even when you chip stuff all the way down, there's a chemical reaction that keeps that on the surface, and that's etch primer. Good stuff. Use it. I mean, hypothetically. Use it hypothetically. If you were going to do this, use etch primer. That makes sense? Okay. So, use the good etch primer. And again, guys, seriously, if you're going to spend the time doing all of this shit, if we were going to do it, it doesn't make any sense to use shitty material. So, hypothetically, if we're going to paint the bike, we got to use decent parts. Make sense? Cool. So, take our very expensive can of etch primer. You want to get kind of a light, we'd have to hypothetically put a little light coat over the whole thing and then come back and do a couple of heavier coats, 2 or 3 most likely, to ensure that it's fully covered everywhere. That's important. Make sure you get coverage everywhere. If there's any bare metal anywhere, it can rust even under your paint. Ask bike companies why they don't normally clear coat stuff over raw steel, because it will rust underneath it'll still oxidize under your clear coat. Anyway, cover the thing. Make sure it gets friggin' covered, hypothetically. So then, we obviously can't paint it in the bathroom, so we're going to have to find a place to paint it. This is a place. Oh God, what a pain in the ass it would be to have to do this in here. What would we even have to do to get ready to paint a whole bike frame in this little tiny box full of morons? We'd have to clean everything. We'd have to really clean everything. We'd have to move the drill press. we'd have to set up some kind of division in here, some kind of wall, some kind of whatever, so we're not just filling the entire building with, you know, the entire building being my house with paint fumes. We'd have to fucking tape this off or plastic it or something. We'd have to cover the entire thing somehow. You have to tape off all the door seams. You have to plastic all the walls, all the bench, all the floor. Have to tape everything. We'd have to staple it all up. This would be a gigantic pain in the ass to do. This would be a pain in the ass, and this would really, really suck. God, that would be a lot of work. I'm not sure that would be worth it. So then, let's say we even bothered to do all of that, then you'd have to take the thing that you etch primed and scuff it all down again, being sure not to miss any spots. We'd have to set up some kind of exhaust fan, probably pulling out that window over there, with maybe some sort of, then you have to filter somehow. So we'd have to filter the air in and the air out. That would be pretty neat. So we'd have to go buy furnace filters like they do in a real paint booth and just figure out a way to set those all up. Oh, this is sounding really like more trouble than it's fucking worth, I gotta be honest with you. And then, pretending we even did all that, we'd have to get the wax and grease remover and wipe the whole friggin' thing down again. I don't even know how many times, because now we've re-scuffed it again and gone over and touched it with all our gross fingers. So now we gotta wipe it down again. And again. I'm telling you guys, this turned into more work than it would be worth. However, if we're gonna do it, I'd like to do it right, and I'd like to do this properly, so I would probably end up going to the tractor store and buying some John Deere Blitz Black, because it's my personal favorite black for a couple of reasons. I like it mostly because it's only black pigment. If you go to the paint store and you buy black paint, it's got white and yellow and red and green and blue and shit in it. Blitz Black is just black. It's also incredibly strong once it's hardened up. It's very, very durable, so it tends to stick around. I like it. So we'll go to the paint. We'd have to go to the paint store. We'd have to buy a couple of cans of Blitz Black. Always get a couple of cans of Blitz Black, because every time I've ever used the shit, one of the spray can tops doesn't fucking work, and I have to use the other one. It's a really nice paint, but the spray can version sucks sometimes. Okay, so then once we had all the black on it, we have to mix up all our inner coat with our metal flake and get ready to spray that. One quick second, not an ad, but on the subject of paint material, for inner coat and clear, for my money, I've never found anything better than Tamco paint. Never once. I've spent more money on stuff that has a better reputation. It's never worked as well. None of it. This stuff is just, for my money here, this is the stuff to use. It's perfect. Also, same to be said for some Paint Huffer Metal Flake, because those guys, it's just, I've used other stuff, it doesn't work. We have so much, the UV here is so serious. We have so much, like the UV, because of our altitude, we have so much UV. This stuff stands up to it, it takes it, no problem. The clear's great, the flake is great. For my dollars, this is all I will buy. For me, and for when I used to do customer shit, that's all we get. So, that's, again, not an ad, just saying. Okay, so then we had all that shit mixed heavy. We're gonna have to put the flake on the bike. So probably 3 to 4 coats, depending how much coverage we're gonna want. So you're gonna do a coat, let it dry, come back, do a coat, let it dry. You're gonna empty the gun between every coat, otherwise the flake fills it all up and it gets clogged. It's a pain in the balls, and it's gonna suck because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of coats and it's a lot of going back and doing stuff and it's a lot of coming back and anyway, we'd have to do like 4 coats of flake and let that all dry. Then, after all that, we'd have to come back and do at least 2 coats of... At least 2. I don't know what this... At least 2 coats of clear, okay? So, 2 good heavy coats of clear on it. Don't worry about running it. It's gonna happen, especially where all the places where all the tubes come together. It's really hard to get enough clear in there and then not get it to run. So don't stress out about it. It's gonna happen. We can fix it later. Have to get it all nice and clear. Make sure you get the tops and bottoms of all the tubes. Because, I mean, I know how I do, and sometimes you're not paying attention and sometimes shit happens. So we'd have to really be extra cautious to make sure we get the top and the bottom of all the tubes. We'd hate to it would really suck if we missed something. Because then, hypothetically, even though we had some really nice lighting in there, it would be almost impossible to see with any sort of clarity the underside of the tubing. So, what'll probably end up happening, if previous attempts are any indicator, what will probably end up happening is probably the bottom side of most, if not all, of the tubing will have not gotten any color on it. It'll probably not get any flake on it because that's even harder to see. Somehow, again, just because I know me, I'm sure it'll get buried in clear, except for the inevitable dry spot. See, some painters like to put dry spots. Some painters like to put runs. You know what I like to do? I like to put runs through my dry spots. That's something you can only get here. So that'll probably happen, which will be a huge pain in the ass. So probably the first time I take it out in the sun to look at it, I'll realize that upside down, the whole bottom of the tubing has all been missed. Freak out, scream a little bit, and then try to figure out what we have to do. Ugh, I hate this part. I always hate this part. Why do I do this to myself when I know this is gonna happen? Then we'll probably have to pout for a couple of days. I mean, really, we gotta wait for the clear to fully dry up anyway, but we can do two things at once. We're multitaskers. I can wait for paint to dry and pout. You just watch me. So that'll probably happen. We'll probably pout for a couple of days while that dries, and we'll suck it up and realize we gotta do something about it. We're gonna have to fix it. Dip into the 1000 grit wet sanding paper and let's make this thing happen. We'll have to go through with a razor blade, have to cut off the heavy runs with a razor, and then 1000 grit the lower ones out, try to blend them back in. Yeah, because we're gonna have to fix the bottom of it somehow. I'm not sure what we did. I'm not sure how much is uncovered, but I'm sure we'll have to fix it. So we're gonna have to wet sand it, and then we're gonna have to mask it again, and then we're gonna have to wax and grease it again, and then hypothetically we're gonna have to put something under all these tubes, and I can't just I won't just mix up a bunch more flake and throw it on there, because then there's an issue with edges and whatever else. So I don't want to, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not a good enough painter to make that blend and make that happen. So we got to figure out something else to do. I mean, we would have to figure out something else to do. Hypothetically, we'd have to figure out something else to do. You guys tired of that hypothetically shit yet? Well, too fucking bad, because I locked the door. You ain't going nowhere. So, since we can't reflake the thing we won't be able to reflake the thing without sanding it all the way down and starting all over again, and we are probably too lazy and irritated to undertake that. So what we'll probably do is just try to put something else over that clear, knowing that it's probably not going to be perfect. Maybe, I don't know, hypothetically, what would be fun? Could just throw some black paint on there, of course, and that would kind of blend it in, hide at the shadows. We could then even, wait a second, hypothetically, we could put some stone guard on there from the paint store, like they use on like leading or trailing edges of fenders and stuff, so they don't get chipped by rocks. They make it in clear, then they make it in this cool black. Maybe we could put some of that on there too. That'd be neat. I mean, hypothetically, since we're probably going to fuck it up and going to have to fix it, we should touch it up with something that's going to be a little sturdier, right? Guys, this sounds like so much work. Having to set all this shit up and paint everything and ruin it and try to fix it and make it look like crap, and then realize we don't have enough buffing compound to fix the spots that we're inevitably going to have to wet sand. So I won't even be able to buff the thing if I finish it. This really sounds like it's more of a pain in the balls than it's going to be worth. I don't know, maybe you could tell me.